safest thing to do is to get your ass out of here.
Yeah, but how?
Catch the Midnight Express.
What's that?
It's not a train. It's a prison word for escape.
Dad. Get me out of here.
I promise you, Billy.
You can drift in here and never know you're gone. You can fade so far out and you don't know where you are anymore, or where anything else is. I find loneliness is the physical pain which hurts all over. You can't isolate it in one part of your body.
The prosecutor objected to your sentence for possession. He wanted a smuggling conviction, and the High Court in Ankara reviewed it.
And?
There were 35 judges on the High Court. 28 voted for a life sentence. We notified your dad.
What do you mean?
Billy!
Live! Billy! Live for what?
Billy,
for what? For what? I have 53 days left. I have 53 days left.
Billy, you're running out of time. If you stay here, you'll die. Jesus Christ, you've got to get yourself together. You've got to get out of here.
Hello, I'm film historian Tony Maeda.
And I'm Brad Shreve, who's just a guy who likes movies.
We discuss movies and television from Hollywood's golden age. We go behind the scenes and share our opinions, too.
And of course, being the average guy, my opinions are the ones that matter.
As does your self-delusion. Welcome to Going Hollywood.
Tony, when you were preparing for this episode watching Midnight Express, did you find yourself laughing as hard as I was laughing? IMDb says it's a dark comedy.
It's uproarious.
Oh, it's hysterical.
It's up there with Tootsie. Did they really say that? Does it really say it's a dark comedy?
It says, yes. It lists the different types of film it is, and it says dark comedy, the first thing on the list.
I think Billy Hayes would have some disagreement with that. I don't think he found 5 years in a Turkish prison uproariously funny.
I'm sure some sick individual somewhere found a man biting another man's tongue off hysterical.
IMDb. Leave it to IMDb. One step above Wikipedia, which ain't saying much. We're talking about, and listener, in case you were wondering, we are talking about Midnight Express today from Columbia in 1978. And before we go any further, two things. Spoiler alert. We had spoiler alerts in this one, so turn us off if you haven't watched Midnight Express. Second one, this is Brad's choice. So Brad, you're flying this plane. You are flying this plane. I'm just Helen Hayes stowing away for the ride and winning an Oscar.
Or Miss Daisy in the back.
Yeah, that's true. So this is interesting. I don't find it comedy. I saw Midnight Express. I watched it for this podcast, of course, and I realized that I hadn't seen it in 30 years. After watching it again, I probably will wait another 30 years to sit down and watch this. I'm going to be in the motion picture home, and I'm going to say, maybe I'll give Midnight Express another try. Because, wow. Yeah, it's a tough one, Brad. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one, definitely. And I don't know how long ago I saw it. It may have been decades as well. I just remembered I always thought it was a very powerful movie. I always thought it was an extremely well done movie. Mm-hmm. I will admit Brad Davis was one of my first crushes. So that's also why it stuck in my head. But I just remember it being a great film. And that's why I never hear anybody talk about it. So I said, let's do it.
You know, Brad Davis, what a talent. What a kook from everything I've read about him and his process. What an incredible talent. A man whose life was tragically cut short when he contracted HIV and died. Actually, he committed suicide, but he knew he was dying. So euthanasia, I believe. And but what a tragic end to an incredible talent, an incredibly this sounds weird, but the only word that comes to mind when I think of Brad Davis is adorable. Now, this is a really tough movie, and really the only reason I can watch this movie is Brad Davis, both his performance and the fact that I find him so touching and lovable in this movie, even though he kind of plays a little bit of an asshole. In this movie, what he goes through is so gut-wrenching because of Brad Davis, I feel.
Yes. To think that he was a new talent. It wasn't his first. This was his first big one.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Did you ever see him in Sybil? Sybil was his breakout. Sybil, the TV movie with Sally Field.
It has been so long since I saw Sybil. All I remember is it had Sally Field in it. I don't remember anything else about it.
If you think he's adorable...
Except the story, obviously.
If you think he's adorable in Midnight Express in a Turkish prison, you should see him. In Sybil, he plays a young man who plays a clown at children's parties. Now, that's either creepy or adorable. With Brad Davis, it's adorable. And he's in love with Sally Field, one of her personalities. He's not sure which.
I'm not sure I want to see it. I am terrified of clowns, absolutely terrified. And so, do I want to see Brad Davis? I got to tell you, there was a festival in Echo Park one day, and I was riding the subway, and a clown got on, and he sat right in front of me and started cruising me. It was the most terrifying moment of my life.
You've heard of the day the clown cried. Brad experienced the day the clown cruised.
But if it was Brad Davis, I probably would have said, let's go. So
I was going to say, and Brad Davis was not the first choice. He was not the studio's choice for sure. And the studio, you know who the studio's first choice to play Billy Hayes was?
Mr. Richard Gere.
That's right. And the studio really wanted Gere. And there's some funny stories about Gere, which we can get into, but Gere dropped out. And Alan Parker, who directed this film, really wanted Davis. He said that Davis's, particularly his courtroom scene, was so gut-wrenching and so moving, and he was so vulnerable that he knew he had the right actor, and he was relieved that he didn't have to deal with Richard Gere.
And do you know the story about Brad Davis's first meeting with them?
No, tell me about it. I'd love to hear this. Mm-hmm.
He lived in North Hollywood, was driving to the studio. His VW broke down.
Oh, yes, I do know this.
He then ran for 5 miles, sweaty, huffing and puffing, popped his head in and said, "Sorry, I'm late." And they were so impressed at how vulnerable he was that it carried through.
There are no accidents. No.
No.
Now, if something like that had happened to me when I was auditioning, they'd say, "Sorry, get out of here."
Or would you have gone? I think it was 2 hours late. Would you even showed up?
Next. Yeah, I would have. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I would have gone, please. Any port in a storm. It's funny because he brings such those qualities to him that we recognize, and we were talking a little bit about this earlier about it is June, it is Pride Month. And we kind of hinted that this was a Pride movie, but I think you and I both agree we were totally wrong about that. I was watching this, I'm like, no, I was wrong. Yeah. The only way it can be stretched is the fact that, yes, Brad Davis is a bit of a gay icon because of the fact that he frequently played gay roles. I mean, the most notorious of which, of course, is Carell, the Fassbinder film that he did, which is insane. But he also played Ned in the first production of The Normal Heart, Larry Kramer's play, before he died. And Brad Davis was bisexual. Yes, there are definitely some gay elements to the Brad Davis persona, but I don't think this film is a Pride film. It's a great film, but it's not a Pride film.
No, after we talked and I was thinking about the movie, I'm like, you know what, we're going to have to give the listener an apology because this isn't a Pride film in any way. I mean, even if the sex scene in the film was more graphic than it was, and, it was like lightning fast and nothing more than longing looks in each other's eyes.
There's no sex.
Even if it was longer, it still would not have been correct for Pride because two men are in prison and need each other and have sex to kind of comfort each other doesn't mean they're gay.
Yeah,
and
that's not a sex scene anyway. It's a misnomer to call that a sex scene. It's a don't have sex scene is what it is. The memory of that loomed in my head because when I first saw it, I was 21, 22. I'm like, oh my God, because Brad Davis is so beautiful.
And I remember it clear as day as a sex scene. I was shocked, just as shocked as I think you were.
Well, here's a funny thing. So to me, that sex scene is when I was acting and I was doing jobs. One of my favorite jobs was at the mythic Video West. The one I was at was in Studio City, and it was wonderful, as you can imagine. I loved it, and we had, as you can also imagine, we had a pretty healthy adult film section. But there was this one section that was next to the adult film section, which was for not really softcore, but sensual films. There was a company that did these films called Greenwood Cooper. Okay. And these were not sex movies. This was not porn. This was soft. It was the illusion of porn. Things were shot. The men were all gorgeous and they were glowing and there was steam in the shot and the shafts of light highlighting body parts, but you never really saw anything, and really bad synthesized music. That's the scene from Midnight Express. I'm like, this is a Greenwood Cooper movie. This is what this is. Because they don't have sex. There's no sex.
No, there isn't any sex. But like it's so alluded to. I remember clear as day. I would have sworn that they have sex in this movie.
Yeah.
Because I remember watching it for the first time and thinking, oh my God.
Yeah,
but it was 1978 or whenever I saw it.
It's kind of interesting that it has a reputation and people have this idea of this sex scene and like, no, there's no sex in it. You can't even really see anything. It's just it's so romantically shot. It really is. I mean, they're doing yoga and the steam and the shafts of light are coming down and their bodies are glistening with sweat and you're like, oh my God.
Ooh, that was hot. Yes.
Take me to a Turkish prison. But it's just like it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
And listener, this movie was based on a true story, and we have to emphasize the word based.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot that was added into this film. There were location changes, which is kind of normal, and we can get into the production of why. There were character changes because, they took multiple characters and put them into one, which is a norm in a film. None of those negated as being a true story. It's just that they really added some stuff, a lot of violence, and they cut the romance and the sex because Billy Hayes said, no, I needed him. We needed each other. It was a long-term, he said he couldn't say that it was love, but it was deeply passionate.
It was an emotional support. I mean, think about it. You're in a Turkish prison, for God's sake, for what turned out to be 5 years. You're going to need some kind of human comfort, some kind of contact. And I think that's beautiful. It's interesting because Billy Hayes was a consultant on this film. Mm-hmm. I mean, he went to Malta where they filmed it. They did not film this in Turkey, and we'll get to that. In Malta, and he was a consultant, so he was perfectly aware of the fact that, first of all, this is a memory. Okay, so we talked about this with I Remember Mama. I'm not going to bring up George Stevens here, so relax, Brad. But we talked about the fact that memory, just by nature of being memory, of being subjective, is not going to be necessarily gospel truth. It's somebody's memory. So that's one removed. Then you have a screenwriter who Hayes is talking to, and he's putting his spin and dramatizing it. So it's one removed there. So yes, that is why it says it's based on a true story. It doesn't say this is a true story, which is very, very important. It was very important. Do we want to tell a little bit what the story's about Midnight Express, Brad? And so people have an idea about what we're talking about, since we've been talking all around it.
Yeah, let me talk about the emotion, and then we can talk about the film.
Sure.
Billy Hayes, one thing that really upset him is the way the Turkish people were portrayed, and I want to get that out right away.
Upset everybody. Mm-hmm.
He said he has a love for the Turkish people. He said that he was not happy that the film portrayed, it depicted all Turks as monsters. And it wasn't the film that the Turkish people deserved. Mm. And we can talk more about the repercussions of this film on Turkey, but I want to get that out because that is important that we point out that he's like, these people weren't as evil as they were in the movie.
Right.
The second one is we're going to talk about a lot of these things that were added, the violence and all that sort of stuff. And he said so much of this film did not happen, but what happened was they caught what it felt like.
Right.
They caught the emotions and the feelings. So maybe he didn't bite a man's tongue out and spit it out and covered in blood. But those are the feelings that he had. And I think that's very important to remember as well.
It is, and I'm the first person to bitch about dramatic license versus dramatic licentiousness, as I call it. But sometimes you need to do that. I think he was in 5 different prisons, and they had to condense it into one. So yeah, of course, characters are going to be combined. There's going to be some license taken when you're telling a dramatic story. I hate it when they go way off the path. And they didn't do that with this. I mean...
Well, imagine if this was done by Ryan Murphy. First of all, the sex scene would have been amazing. But secondly, it would have been so off the rails.
Kathy Bates would have been in there somewhere. And Jessica Lange would have been in there somewhere. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what... First of all, I want to ask you, what exactly is the Midnight Express?
The Midnight Express is escaping from prisons. Most particularly, I don't know if that's a common usage, but it was... definitely used in this movie for that particular jail, is what they called it, the Midnight Express.
Yeah, that's right. What is the film Midnight Express about? What's just a plot synopsis?
Young man in the early 70s named Billy Hayes was boarding a plane. He was flying from Turkey back where he'd been on vacation. He was flying home, and he was foolish enough to strap hashish, quite a bit of hashish, on his body, and was going to board the plane home. And the next thing he knew, he was surrounded by guns and stripped because I don't know what happened in real life. In the movie, he was so obvious nervous wreck.
Yes, well, we could hear his heartbeat.
Yes,
that's part of the soundtrack.
The whole score in the soundtrack was just amazing because it makes your heart beat. And so he ends up in a Turkish prison, and it's not pleasant in any way, shape, or form. It's dirty, and people are beaten, not treated well. He is sentenced to 4 years, and the prosecuting attorney is not happy with that. So just before his 4 years is over, the court decides, no, we're going to make it a life sentence.
Right.
And that's when Billy says, that's when Billy says, I got to get out of here, and his girlfriend convinces him that's the case.
Right. Well, the prosecutor wasn't happy that it went. He wanted to charge him with smuggling, which was a life sentence, and he was charged with possession, which was 4 years. And then they changed it. He had 53 days left, and I think it's 53 days. Yeah,
53.
He's called in the court, and they're like, "No, we've changed your sentence. It's to a lifetime." So, I mean, his breakdown is phenomenal. One of the amazing things about Brad Davis. So I'll give a little background about how it all came about. This all started with Peter Guber. Now, Peter Guber is a big producer. He's still alive today. He was a former head of Columbia. And during his reign in Columbia, they did things like The Last Picture Show, Taxi Driver, The Last Detail. So he did some big movies. Later, he teamed up with John Peters and did the first Batman, not the one with Adam West. Batman, the movie with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. He also produced Rain Man. So he had read an article by Billy Hayes in a Long Island newspaper that talked about his experiences and his eventual escape from this Turkish prison in the early 70s. He had not written the book yet. This was a series of articles. And he was really intrigued by this premise. So he tracked down Billy Hayes in England. He acquired the film rights, and he also acquired a young screenwriter who this was his very first commissioned screenplay. And who was that screenwriter, Brad?
This guy, I don't know if anybody's going to know his name. I think it's something like Oliver Stone.
Yeah, something
is
like
that.
Oliver Rock. Yeah. Oliver Stone. Oliver Stone. Stone, not Patsy Stone, Oliver Stone.
Hey, if he was on the Flintstones, he wouldn't have to change his name.
So it's true. So Guber asked Stone to submit a sample of his writing, and you know what he gave him? He gave him the unfinished script of Platoon. So yeah, pretty good spec script here. Obviously, Platoon was later made. So Stone worked with Hayes in a hotel room. He met with him in a hotel room in New York City for a week. And then he went to London to work on the script. And he said he was put in the director, Alan Parker's office in a back room. And it was kind of like it was very Dickensian. He felt a little bit like Bob Cratchit working on the script. But apparently, the first draft was so impressive to everybody. Everybody said it was a page turner. this first draft. They loved it so much. And that's when they decided we're going to make this film. Now, Columbia, that the studio that was going to produce this film, which Guber had been the head of for a while, so he had a relationship with Columbia, they thought the film was very anxiety-producing, according to Guber. They tried to persuade him not to make it. So he actually had to use the profits he made from his previous film, The Deep, as collateral for any losses against Midnight Express. Now, the budget of Midnight Express, do you know what the budget was, Brad?
Yes, and I've heard people refer to it as a indie film because of the situation, even though technically it was not an indie film.
Right.
It was $2.3 million.
$2.3 million. And Guber says the catering budget for a film today is more than it cost to make this film.
Yes.
And this film grossed, Columbia, they should be happy. This film grossed $35 million in 1978. So that is a pretty impressive return on your investment.
Yeah, I'd say that they turned out pretty well.
As I said, Guber hired Alan Parker to direct. Parker had only really done his one big movie before this was Bugsy Malone, which is a gangster film, a musical gangster film featuring children.
And it's a god-awful film.
It's not a good movie. It's not a good, but they saw something in it. Look, I got to be honest with you. I am not a huge Alan Parker fan. I mean, he also did Mississippi Burning, a movie I respect. He did Evita, which has some moments. He did Fame. I'm not a big Alan Parker fan. However, I do admire, obviously, his artistry and his determination to get this film made. And the finished product. But yeah,
I absolutely loved Fame. I adored Fame. I can't tell you how many times I watched it, but I also haven't seen it since the year it came out, and I doubt I would feel the same today.
Yeah, it's sometimes, things change. I like Fame, but he's not one of my, oh my God, he's not a Sidney Lumet to me. He's not a Roman Polanski to me. He's a very good director. He is a very good director. No shade, please, to Alan Parker. I'm just saying, in my book, not my favorite. But he really achieved an amazing thing with this film. As we said before, the studio wanted Richard Gere to play the part of Billy.
Which I can't imagine because great actor, but he's awfully pretty. And maybe he could have pulled it off. I know he dropped out, but that was one of the concerns they had was that he was too...
Right, but he was hot at this.
That point. He was, yes.
He had just done Blood Brothers, and he was just about to do Looking for Mr. Goodbar. He just had done Looking for Mr. Goodbar. That's 77, so this is 78. So he was hot. But Gere did what many young actors who were suddenly hot frequently do or did in the 70s. Mm-hmm. He refused to read. He would only take meetings. And this did not sit well with Alan Parker. It didn't sit well with Barbra Streisand in the 80s when she wanted him for Yentl either, but that's another story. So the meetings began well, but his refusal to read and his endless questions really began to grated on Parker. And he finally agreed to read, but Parker said it was perfunctory. So he started seeing other actors. And among the actors he saw were Timothy Bottoms, Dennis Quaid, which is kind of interesting, and we'll get to that later, and Brad Davis. Now, Davis, as we said, had only really done Sybil, and he was kind of an unknown quantity. But Parker really he was really, really pushing for Davis. In fact, the studio wanted Gere, and Parker wanted Davis, and they went back and forth and back and forth. And then finally the studio said, no, we're doing Richard Gere. So they actually had a meeting with Davis and told him he didn't get the part. And the producer, Marshall, said he felt so bad he watched him walk away. And then a month later he went to London, and there was Brad Davis getting his wardrobe fittings because Gere dropped out. So there you go. That's film history for you.
Granted, Brad Davis was not a star in any way. He was not well known at all. He may have been known off Broadway, but that was about it. The fact that you had Richard Gere, who thought he was top of the heap at that point and refused to even read, and then you have this handsome, vulnerable, talented man who ran 5 miles for his.
Amazing, yeah.
There's justice in that.
There is justice in it. Yeah. Also cast in this film is John Hurt. Now, not John Hurd and not William Hurt, John Hurt, the Elephant Man. I'm a human being, John Hurt. And I have a funny John Hurt story. But first of all, before I do that, you probably didn't do this because you weren't an actor. You weren't, you didn't go to performing arts college, but there's a great there's a fun tongue twister we used to do, which I actually did a bit before we started recording. And it is John Hurt, William Hurt, John Hurt. Wait a minute. I didn't get that right. John Hurt, William Hurt, John Hurt.
I don't know if I could do that. I don't think I would remember it well.
John Hurt, William Hurt, John Hurt. John Hurt, William Hurt, John Hurt. There you go. I got it together. I had to get the rhythm of it.
Very good.
It's a little bit of a tongue twister. Anyway, so so not William Hurt, John Hurt. And I have a friend. This is my quick story. I have a friend who gets kind of Lucy Ricardo when she gets around celebrities. We call her a movie star murderer because there have been deaths after there have been run-ins with this girl. So anyway, this is a long time ago. We were in New York. We were to play, and William Hurt was there. He was in the audience. After the play, he came out, and all these people were surrounding him, getting his autograph. And she says to me, "Who's that? What's going on there?" And I said, "Well, it's William Hurt." She's like, "Oh my God, I love him. We have to get his autograph." So we go up with our playbills, and we're like, "Could you sign it?" And she says to him, "Mr. Hurt, I loved you in Midnight Express." And that's when you just slowly back away.
Yeah.
Hoping the subway stop is really close by. So anyway, John Hurt. Yes. He is a British actor. He was the only one to get an Academy Award nomination for this role. He plays the role of Max in this film.
I'm going to give one of the very few complaints I had about this film.
Okay.
I think he did a great job emotionally and everything. I couldn't understand half of what he was saying. Really? Because of the way his character was just kind of, and it could have been my sound system. That may have been it. Because of the way his character was just, almost, I'm trying to think of how do you explain. Talk like he was just worn out and exhausted, but he was philosophical as well. And he was high all the time. He was high all the time, most definitely. His character. It made it hard for me. So I missed a lot of what he had to say. In fact, sometimes I had to rewind it and put on closed caption.
For people who don't know who John Hurt was, as I just said, he was also the Elephant Man. Famously, he played the Elephant Man, although, I mean, he's the Elephant Man, so you're not going to go, "Oh, that looks like John Hurt." But he's very eccentric. And what's funny is that he didn't bathe for most of the 53 days of filming in order to get into the reality of the character of Max, also get into the body odor of Max.
Talk about method acting.
And John Hurt was actually impressed with how eccentric Brad Davis was. That's how eccentric Brad Davis was. He would do push-ups before the scene, and apparently he always had to pee in a bucket, and he would pee forever in the scene before he did anything. I mean, he was really getting into the mind of Billy, and you can see it. I mean, he's living that part. That part is exhausting, and he also there was the scene with the girlfriend, where he's been in the sanitarium now for a while, and she comes to visit him. He was so nervous about it that he got some what they call French courage, i.e., some cognac, and he had a couple drinks of cognac to kind of just relax himself. And then there was a camera problem, and they drank more cognac and more cognac. So by the time they came to film the scene, he couldn't really keep his head up. But they were on a tight schedule. So if you notice in that scene, he's kind of like at a 45-degree angle. The whole scene, but it works. It works for the scene.
It does work. Alan Parker said by the end of the film that Davis had become Billy. And he was actually concerned about how deeply he did. But at the same time, he liked that he could use that.
Yeah, of course. No, he was a really interesting character. Brad Davis. He really was. So John Hurt came into his meeting with Parker with a pencil sketch of Max, of who he thought Max was. And who Max ended up being on the screen is very close to that sketch with the glasses and just his sinewy body. And, he's in a Turkish prison and he has a cat. And the minute I saw that cat, I went, that cat, well, that cat's a goner because anytime, come on, he's in a Turkish prison. But he is amazing in it. He is truly, truly amazing in this film. He was nominated, as I said, supporting actor. Christopher Walken won that year. But my God, what an incredible performance. What an incredible performance. Both of them. And who's the third one in that triumvirate of leading men in Midnight Express, Brad?
Well, there's also a fourth, but the third I'm sure you're talking about is Randy Quaid.
Randy Quaid.
Jimmy Booth.
Randy Quaid. I forgot it was Randy Quaid, and I'm like, God, he looks like Randy Quaid. But I have this idea of Randy Quaid from the Vacation movies, and I forget that when Randy Quaid was younger, he was actually not a bad-looking guy. I mean, he didn't look like his brother, God knows. But that's also what's interesting is that his brother Dennis was up for the part of Billy. So had Dennis Quaid gotten the role, it'd be these two brothers playing total strangers.
But remember, Randy was also in What's Up, Doc?
He was in What's Up, Doc. Well, he was a Peter Bogdanovich found Randy Quaid when he was in Texas filming The Last Picture Show, and he brought him to Hollywood. So he was a Bogdanovich baby. But he's wonderful in this. I forgot what a good actor Randy Quaid is. Maybe because he became such a nut job, but you forget he's a really, really good actor, and he is wonderful in this film. He's wonderful in this film.
He really was. You talk about feeling the pain that Billy went through. His character Jimmy, good God, all of them. John Hurt. It's the emotions in this film were exhausting.
Yeah, they are exhausting. Yeah, I gotta say, this is one of those movies where I'm like, I don't love this movie. It's hard for me to say I don't love this movie. That's okay. You don't have to love movies. You can appreciate them. I appreciate them, but I'm actually absolutely kind of certain that I probably won't watch this movie for another 30 years because it is emotionally draining. It is exhausting. I had to stop it halfway and then come back and watch it again because I find it's harrowing. I mean, this is the brilliant thing about Brad Davis's performance is that he not only becomes Billy, you become Billy. You identify with him so deeply. He's like Mary Pickford reaching out to you. You relate to him on such a deep level that these things are harrowing to you to watch because it ain't going to get better. It's just not going to get better. He's got to get out of there.
Yeah, and the scenes that are violent and disgusting, I know some of the audience members found it very disgusting. They aren't just gross, though. They're painful.
No, yeah.
Emotionally painful.
Yeah.
Because you just feel the hurt, the anger, the helplessness. More than anything, you feel the helplessness that Billy had.
Definitely. And
all hope was gone.
When his father comes to visit him, oh my God, it's just, I mean, can you imagine saying your parent coming to you and you're in a Turkish prison after you've just done the stupidest thing in the world, trying to smuggle these drugs in. Stupid. Not only that, but who knows what his future is going to be. And you're saying goodbye to your father, and that last look he gives him, oh my God, it's gut-wrenching.
Well, in the scene, I don't know if the man he wasn't the attorney, because the attorney was a Turkish man. Maybe he was the man that came with his father and then came back to tell Billy.
He's from the embassy.
Okay, he's from the embassy. When he told Billy that he had been extended from 4 years to a life in prison, that is when Brad Davis was at his best. I mean, just grabbing that man by his shirt and screaming, 53 days, 50 days. Oh, God. It was so heartbreaking.
And then he gets sent to the asylum, and they walk the wheel. That was my first knowledge of this film. Was I had friends who would say, "Walk the wheel, walk the." I'm like, "What are you quoting?" And then I watched it. I was like, "Oh, okay, yes, walk the wheel, walk the wheel." So as we said, the movie was.
Well, tell people what walk the wheel is.
Oh, okay,
because they may not remember.
Walk the wheel. I just assumed they knew. So Billy is in an asylum for the criminally insane. He looks like he's never going to get out, and at a certain point in the day, they all congregate together and walk. They walk to the right. Very important. They walk to the right around this very large pillar in a group, and they just keep walking. And they walk the wheel, and they keep walking in a circle, over and over again. And it's very important you walk to the right, because right is correct, left is wrong, left is communism. You walk to the right. And so it's a very interesting scene. So at the point when Billy, is it after his he sees his fiancée and she says, "You've got to get out of here. You've got to get out of here." But he goes back and he starts to...
Yes, because that's why he changes direction.
He starts to walk to the left and everybody's stopping him. You can't walk that way. You have to... because she says to him, "You have to get out of here. You're dying in here." And he is. He's catatonic now. It's been 5 years. He's catatonic in this asylum. And she's like urging him to, "You've got to get out of here any way you can." And she gives him a scrapbook, a photo album, which has money in the back, so he can get out and get to Greece and get out of there. And that's when he starts to wake up a little bit and he starts to walk at the opposite direction. And everybody stops him. Everybody's like, "No, you got to walk the other way. You got to walk the way," because they're all autotrons. They're all, they've all been lobotomized, even not physically, but mentally.
And he stops taking the meds because this is a psych ward with prisoners, and mainly they just kept them drugged so they didn't have to deal with them.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it is a horrific idea. It's a horrific. I mean, it makes me nervous just to think about it. It's just the worst idea. It's just terrible. It's terrible. So what happens with the character? So his girlfriend comes and urges him to get out. So there has been a sadistic animal who's been in charge of the prison, and his name is Hamadou, played by the actor Paul L. Smith. And he is incredibly violent. He's the one who beat him. They like to beat you in the bottom of your feet in this movie. I didn't remember that, and I was like, why? That must be very painful. I guess that's why they do it. Very violent, very scary man. And he bribes him, part of the money that his girlfriend gave him in the photo album. And he takes him out of the asylum he thinks he's going to, he starts to take him to another room and he's going to rape him. And at that moment, Billy pushes him back, and very, very satisfying death scene, but you wanted him to do more.
Yes. Yeah, it wasn't satisfying to me. It was too quick and easy, but yeah.
He backs up against a thing for a coat, a coat rack thing, and it goes in the back of his brain and kills him. So Billy grabs his gun, grabs a uniform from outside the room they were in, disguises himself as a guard, and escapes. I mean, in the end, it's the easiest escape in the world. I mean, how it all
casually walks out the door.
He just casually walks out. And then he starts to run, and he runs and he leaps. And that's where the movie ends. But that's not where the script ended. Do you know this?
The script ended, I believe, at the airport, and they did the still shots and stuff.
Right, but there was there was a whole sequence of his escape of getting to Greece. And
oh, are you talking about the real story that happened, or
no? In the screenplay, in Oliver Stone's screenplay, there was actually yes, that's very true.
It's more along the lines of what really happened.
There's a whole sequence.
Well, when it comes to that final scene, one of the things that I don't like about it, but I think it was the right decision at the same time, is it was nothing like Billy's Escape. Mm-hmm. But Billy's Escape is a movie in itself.
Right.
He at that point, he had been transferred to another prison. It was on an island. He had to swim. He had to get a dinghy.
Right, exactly.
In rough waters, the rain. He was dangerous in Greece because Greece had such secure borders. He had to walk through a minefield, which he fortunately didn't know was a minefield at the time. So, he lucked out. And then he was detained in Greece because they were hoping he had information from Turkey. That is an amazing story in itself. And the studio wasn't happy.
Right.
That Parker cut that out.
Right. Well, they didn't even film it. They didn't even film it.
Right.
He said he knew. Do you know who was the head? You know who was the head of Columbia at this time, by any chance? We just talked about him. David Beagleman. Again. This season has been.
I couldn't remember his name. That was a guess.
3 mentions of David Beagleman, of Leopold and Loeb, Judy Garland's manager. Now he was running Columbia, at least until he was fired for embezzlement. So that's David Beagleman. He said, just go ahead and shoot it. We don't have to use it. And, and Guber knew and Parker knew that, no, if we shoot it, you're going to use it. We're not stupid here. And Parker felt that the heart of the story was Billy's experiences in the prison. Not to change the texture of the film at the end and make it an action-adventure film of him escaping wouldn't have been true to the previous 90 minutes that we just watched. So it was a very smart decision. And you're right. There are still photos of him arriving with his family at the very end. It's interesting they did that with Brad Davis and they didn't do it with real Billy Hayes, I think. But anyway.
That would have been interesting.
That would have been interesting. But yeah, so the film ends with him just running and then doing a leap in the air, I agree with them. I think that's the perfect ending because we don't need this added thing of him, in Greece trying to get out.
As I said, it bothered me because it wasn't close to the truth. But I do agree with one reason Parker felt it was good. He said it would change the tone of the movie too much because they would have moved him from that horrible prison to an island where there's water and blue skies, and it would have been almost an entirely different film. Yeah. Certainly the tone would have been gone. And then, like you said, then him escaping is an action-adventure film. A very interesting one. I would like to see that portrayed, but it is not the story. This is a prison story.
Right. No, exactly.
A horrific one.
The film was finished, and they made the unusual decision of having its first screening at Cannes, which is really interesting. I mean, it's like they're throwing all the marbles on the table because the studio didn't believe in this film. They're like, you know what? It's not going to have any audience at all. Let's just throw it at Cannes. And because of what you talked about earlier, and because of the treatment of the Turkish people and the very bad light this puts Turkey in, there were protests at Cannes the day of the screening, but all that did was create a buzz at the film. And the first screening was packed, and the audience gave it a standing ovation. And that controversy about the Turkish controversy, though, was very prevalent in Europe. In fact, I don't know if you read this, but this movie did not show in Turkey until the 90s.
Yeah, and I think it was people in France were very upset about it. Once they started playing it ran in a theater for 6 years.
Yeah, so there you go.
I thought that was it. But yeah, the Turkish people were offended. It actually damaged relationships between the United States and Turkey. And unfortunately, Turkish tourism took a nosedive.
Really? Wow.
Straight down. Yeah, it killed their tourism industry for a while.
Isn't that amazing what a film can do?
Well, I would watch that film. I didn't know anything about Turkey at the time. I watched that. I'm like, hell no, I'm not going to Turkey.
I really never had a desire to go to Turkey, but I'm not going to smuggle drugs from Turkey, I'll tell you right now.
Well, that's for sure, yes.
I got nervous coming back from London when I went into a store to buy some aspirin, because I'm like, can I take this on the plane? Are they going to say, it's just like, store-bought, perfectly safe. But the controversy with the Turks did prevent the film, they said, from winning the Palme d'Or at Cannes. But it didn't matter because it opened the United States very soft opening, only a handful of theaters. But the amazing thing was that it grew. It kept growing week by week by week. Word of mouth, critical praise, until, like we said, it earned over $30 million on a budget of how much, Brad? 3.2?
2.3.
2.3. That's pretty amazing. Yes, and it was nominated for 6 Oscars. It was nominated for Best Film, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Screenplay based on another source, Editing, and Score. And it won for Screenplay and Score, the very first fully synthesized movie score.
And Brad Davis did not win an Oscar.
He wasn't even nominated.
No, he wasn't even nominated. But he did win a Golden Globe. And
yes,
it was for... I don't know what the term they use. Basically, the best new actor.
Yeah, newcomer.
And that was at least well-deserved. I would have liked to have seen him nominated in the Academy, but at least he got that.
No, he wasn't nominated. No, this was the year of Coming Home, so Jon Voight won. There were some good performances that year. I mean, Warren Beatty was nominated for Heaven Can Wait. I love Heaven Can Wait. Gary Busey for Buddy Holly Story. De Niro was for The Deer Hunter, and Laurence Olivier for Boys from Brazil. So those are some big, big hitters. So considering this is your first time out, I would have loved to have seen him get an Oscar nomination. I would. But again, it's kind of like with Ordinary People. Who are you going to bump here? All of these are incredible performances.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned them, let's talk about the top grossing films that year.
Please.
Midnight Express, despite how well it did, it was number 15. Number 1 was Grease at $153 million, which is no surprise. So he was up against some pretty big contenders.
Yes.
Number 2 was Animal House. I actually saw Animal House probably that year 14 times. I was
Oh
so
my
obsessed
God.
with Animal House and John Belushi.
I saw Grease 14 times.
Well, I saw Grease a lot too. Jaws 2. Now there's a sad state of affairs that Jaws 2 was number 3. Heaven Can Wait was number 4. I agree with you. I love that film.
Yeah.
Number 5 is sad as well, which was Every Which Way But Loose.
Oh, we've talked about that. Yeah.
And to give a frame of reference to take people back in time, other films that year were Death on the Nile, which we already did, Superman, Halloween, Up in Smoke, Coma, and probably the film that should have won the Oscar, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Oh my God. That's so funny. I remember that movie. I remember Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. That's so funny.
I remember the song, Puberty, Puberty Love.
Wow.
And I only saw it one time, but it'll never get out of my head. Before we wrap up, I want to talk a little more about Brad Davis, because
Please, let's do.
he was cast in a film that became a major motion picture a few years later.
Uh-huh.
The year before this film. And that movie was Rambo. And he was cast in it, and it didn't happen because production just fell apart, and it didn't come out till 82 with Stallone. I am just trying to picture Brad Davis as Rambo in that movie. It would have been a whole different film.
A very, very sensitive, vulnerable Rambo.
Yes.
How do you make that leap?
Yes.
How do you make that leap from Brad Davis to Sylvester Stallone? That makes no sense to me at all.
Money.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yes.
I just picture Brad Davis in that role, and not only would it have been a different movie, I think it would have been a wonderful movie, whereas Rambo was just Rambo.
Well, yeah, it was a terrible movie. It's a terrible movie. I think that this movie, if anything, it's a testament to the great talent of Brad Davis. As I said, he left us much too young. He was 41, I believe, when he killed himself. And he did have a substance abuse problem that he dealt with his entire life. He was an incredibly talented, gifted man that we lost much, much too soon to two diseases, to the disease of HIV and to the disease of drug addiction. And it's unfortunate because his body of work, though small, is very impactful. I mean, you've got Sybil, you've got Midnight Express, you've got The Normal Heart. I'd throw Carell in there because Carell is something to see, I'll tell you right now.
I'm ashamed to say I've never have seen it.
It's something to see. That's all I'm going to say. It's something to see.
I've seen the shots of Brad Davison, and I'll watch just for that.
I went as Halloween. I went a few years as Carell in that sailor outfit he wears. It's a great gay costume. I'll tell you right now.
And you mentioned he killed himself, and I want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
First, you mentioned his substance abuse, and his wife likes to tell a story, and I think she puts a little humor in it, that at a Hollywood party, Brad was ripping his shirt off, crying, "Okay, who's got the drugs?" And a big director muttered, "There goes his career."
Oh, God. So sad.
But as a result, he did assisted suicide. His wife was beside him and a friend who has remained unmentioned. After that happened, she took on advocating for assisted suicide as well as support for those with HIV. And can we talk a little bit about how Brad Davis felt about
Sure, of course.
having HIV in Hollywood?
Yeah. Oh, well, he didn't let anybody know. That's how he felt.
Well, he didn't let you know, and he was bitter about it because
Yeah.
he said he couldn't let anybody know.
No.
He had this disease. He had a family to support, so he couldn't tell people about this thing that was killing him.
Exactly. How horrible. How horrible is that?
Yes. And in the book that he wrote that his wife released after he died, he said, "I make my money in an industry that professes to care very much about the fight against AIDS. But in actual fact, if an actor is even rumored to have HIV, he gets no support on an individual basis. He does not work."
Yeah, he's right. He was right.
Yeah, that's very sad that he ended
Hollywood.
up that way. So, but he did a lot of advocacy for HIV and AIDS as well during that time.
Incredible spirit, gone much too soon.
Yes. Yep. Well, as always, I gotta say, if this is your first or maybe second time, or you're just new listening to this show, please subscribe. And if you've been listening to it for a while, or even if you're brand new and you just think we're fabulous, please rate and review us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to this podcast.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. Well, I know I just have one more thing left to say, and I don't want to say it, Brad. So let's not say goodbye. Let's say John heard William hurt John hurt. Go for it.
Because I can't say that,
Oh,
we'll say goodbye.
Poor John hurt. Hurt William hurt. John heard it.